With as colorful and adorable of a cast of characters as the Kirby series has under its belt, it's only reasonable that it would have plenty of unbreakable bonds, as well as some more tumultuous ones too. I'm Keefinosi with One Up Binge, and it's time to ride our Warp Star over to Dreamland to talk about Kirby relationships, healthy to toxic. And like usual, we'll be starting off this list with the healthiest relationships and working our way down. These are the healthy relationships. Surprisingly, the gold medal of health is going to a relationship that doesn't even involve Kirby. Leon and Carol, leaders of the Beast Pack. While these two are initially framed as the villains of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, it turns out the story is much more complicated than it seems. Leon's mind grew subject to the control of Fecto Elphilis, making him a much more ruthless and hostile leader who called himself Leongar. Despite this, Carol, and the rest of the Beast Pack too, remained ever loyal to Leon. Even not understanding Leon's newfound language, Carol kept following him to whatever bitter end that resulted in, and ultimately, she saved the life of Elphilin out of both kindness and a desire to enlist his and Kirby's help to restore Leon's soul. Whether it's romantic or they're just really good friends, this relationship demonstrates enough loyalty to earn the gold medal of health, and that extends to the rest of the Beast Pack too. The silver medal of health goes to Kirby's newest friendship as of now, Kirby and Elphilin. This adorable little guy was introduced in Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and whether you were a little hesitant to trust him at first or you had hope from the get-go, we were all quick to find a reliable buddy in Elphilin. He tags along with Kirby throughout the whole of his adventures, sort of like Ribbon and Kirby 64. While Elphilin's not really much of a fighter, he's a loyal companion who will give Kirby advice here and there, encouraging him along the way in his adventure, and on Kirby's end, he's more than ready and willing to help Elphilin save the Waddle Dees who were kidnapped by the Beast Pack. At the end of the game, Elphilin's willing to sacrifice himself to seal the rift between Kirby's dimension and his own, and although he thankfully lives, that tearjerker of a scene is enough to put him in the BFF category of Kirby's relationships. As a player, I also appreciate him telling you whether you've collected all the pieces of Leon's soul in the post-game mode. Enabling every Kirby fan's chronic completionism addiction is another brownie point for Elphilin. Well, since we've already name-dropped her, next up is the friendship between Kirby and Ribbon. Their relationship is more or less the same as Elphilin and Kirby's, except it's sort of in reverse. Instead of Kirby crashing into Ribbon's world, she crashes into his while fleeing from dark matter. Seeing her magical crystal broken into a bunch of tiny shards, Kirby volunteers to help her out, making for another friendship rooted in selfless altruism. The only reason she's below Elphilin in terms of friendship is that she does a bit less to help. The only thing she really contributes is carrying the crystal shards throughout the game, and to a slightly more impressive degree, carrying Kirby himself in the final fight so he can focus on shooting Zero 2, since this is one of the, 2 Kirby games where he can't fly. Still, credit where it's due. But while those friendships were great, up next is a relationship of royal proportions, King Dedede and the Waddle Dees. A king is nothing without his loyal subjects. The Waddle Dees are extremely devoted to their king, and they're always happy to serve him however he likes, whether it's bringing him food, playing chess with him, or firing cannons and invading parties. The Waddle Dees have proven to be reliable servants to Dedede over the years. Thankfully, Waddle Dees are more than just servants, they're dependable friends too. We'd be remiss if we didn't particularly mention Bandana Waddle Dee, the king's right-hand man who insists on fighting Kirby during their rematch, even when Dedede offers to spare him from it. After his defeat, Bandana Dee and the rest of the Waddle Dees walk alongside him into the sunset to offer some comfort. There's also the Waddle Dee from Kirby 64 who convinces King Dedede to join Kirby and the gang to save Ripple Star from dark matter, which really kickstarted King Dedede's now long-term friendship with Kirby. The Great King rewards his subjects' loyalty with care and protection, unwilling to let anyone else be mean to them, and even taking on an entire army just to buy one of them time to escape in Kirby and the Forgotten Land. It almost seems like Dedede takes more of a fatherly role towards his Waddle Dees than anything else, and he does it quite well, which earns him a spot fit for a king. Next we have the group friendship between Kirby and the Animal Buddies, and Gooey, of course. How and why Kirby befriended 6 huge plushy-shaped animals and a defective blob of dark matter it's beyond anyone, but it doesn't change the fact that this is a mutually beneficial relationship on every end. Kirby will give the animals some companionship, not to mention rescuing them when they're captured. In return, they'll provide him with some easier transportation on different types of terrain, as well as unique ways to use his copy abilities. The worst anyone could say about them is that they can get a bit jealous or even downright heartbroken when another animal buddy is chosen over them. They're like little kids vying for the attention of their busy parents. Next is the friendship between Kirby and Bandana Waddle Dee. The first of many, many characters who were not friends with Kirby from the get-go, Bandana Dee made his debut as Kirby's first opponent in the Megaton Punch minigame of Superstar. Later, he returns as King Dedede's most trusted servant in the remake's Revenge of the King mode, and acts as a mini-boss of such staggering difficulty, we'd rather not reflect on it for too long. Bandana Dee quickly shows off his good-natured side. Although his loyalty lies with King Dedede, that doesn't stop him from being friendly friendly with Kirby when the two end up teaming up to help Magolor in Return to Dreamland. When Dedede gets kidnapped in Kirby Triple Deluxe, Bandana Dee shows support again by providing Kirby with healing items before tough boss fights, cheering him on along the way, and ever since then, they've gone from casual acquaintances to having one of the closest friendships in the series. He's even become a sort of player 2 character for the series, and is Kirby's most consistent ally as of late. While it may not be the healthiest, we're giving our next spot to Kirby's longest running friendship in the series, Kirby and King Dedede. Nintendo's described these two as arch frenemies, and there really couldn't be a more perfect way to describe their relationship. Things started out pretty rocky here though. Although Kirby was quick to forgive King Dedede for stealing all the food in Dreamland, and Dedede was quick to forgive Kirby for inadvertently re-releasing the Nightmare Wizards to torment Dreamland, there's no doubt that there's some strife between the two, and it's led to a rivalry that's been going on for decades. That said, ever since Kirby and Dedede became friends, Dedede's softened up a lot, and the two have forged a strong bond. They still fight a lot, sometimes due to miscommunications or friendly competition, and usually due to Dedede being possessed by a demon, but what's changed is the context. At the end of the day, Dedede has proven himself a loyal friend to Kirby. He's saved Kirby's life on numerous occasions, like in Kirby Triple Deluxe, and regularly helps him out in games like Return to Dreamland or Star Allies. Their friendship inspired Dedede to become a king worthy of a kingdom, and learning to enjoy life while also protecting his people. And we don't even have to tell you how many times Kirby's exercised Dedede at this point. They've overcome a lot, and for all their struggles, they might just be each other's most dependable allies, so we're gonna place them pretty high on our list. The same can be said for the friendship between Kirby and Meta Knight. It's crazy how, despite being around for 30 years now, we still barely know anything about Meta Knight, except that he's awesome. We know that he's good friends with King Dedede, we know that he wants to become stronger and considers Kirby a rival, and we know that he's one of Dreamland's greatest heroes. But as for his friendship with Kirby, well, that's still a pretty big mystery, but rest assured, the two are also in that frenemies category. Meta Knight and Kirby team up a lot, and they also fight a lot, but both of them work for the good of Dreamland. We've seen less close interaction between them than between Kirby and Dedede, but given how Meta Knight looks after Kirby and how much they genuinely care about each other, it's safe to say they deserve an honorable spot nonetheless. And of course, we couldn't neglect to finish out this little friend circle. Next up we have King Dedede and Meta Knight. While they don't directly interact too often, these two have always been friends ever since Kirby's adventure, where Meta Knight helped King Dedede keep the Star Rod pieces from Kirby so Nightmare wouldn't be unleashed again, while he secretly trained Kirby to actually defeat Nightmare instead of sweeping him under the rug. Now, while they couldn't be more different, we see in Kirby Fighters 2 that there's one thing that will always bring Dedede and Meta Knight together: a burning desire to finally conquer Kirby in the field of battle. They work together and make some pretty sick combo moves to give Kirby the battle of a lifetime. I mean, they don't beat him, but they made a really good attempt. Meta Knight may be exasperated with Dedede sometimes, but it's clear that these two are always going to be there for each other, even if Meta Knight's too cool and stoic to show it until after the credits. Rounding out the healthy relationships is that of Kirby and Magolor. Out of the many, and I mean many, reformed villains in the series, Magolor is the one who still tends to raise the most eyebrows. That's quite understandable since he did betray Kirby and his friends to get his grubby little disembodied hands on the Master Crown and potentially rule the world. But there's a difference between Magolor and a certain other traitorous goofball we'll get to later. He actually regretted putting the crown on in a mix of, man, I really shouldn't have betrayed my friends, and sweet Jesus Christ, the pain is unbearable, let me out! Thankfully, Magolor offered a genuine apology after his severe lapse in judgment. He saved up money through a lucrative gem apple business to build Kirby an amusement park for his birthday, and even a rhythm game for King Dedede. His misdeeds were major, but so was his redemption. You gotta respect the effort, so we're giving him a spot in the healthy category, even if just barely. But now it's time to talk about the more complicated side of things. These are the rocky relationships. First up is a love story gone wrong, the tragedy of Taranza and Sectonia. Once a dear friend of Sectonia, Taranza decided to gift her with a magical mirror to show his appreciation and possibly affection too. Unfortunately, what was initially meant to be an act of care for his friend turned into a disaster when the spirit of Dark Meta Knight corrupted her, turning Sectonia into an absolute tyrant and also a bee for some reason. To his credit, Taranza meant no harm, and he even stuck by her through her corruption, leading to him doing some unsavory things. But in the end, he knew what had to be done, and he helped King Dedede save Kirby and take the evil queen down. Hopefully, he finds peace, and even more hopefully, his departed friend forgives him. Next is another villain relationship, and one that follows a very similar vein: Highness and the Mage Sisters. The Mage Sisters' devotion and loyalty to both each other and to Highness isn't a question at all. Said devotion is reasonable. After all, Highness did save all their lives while they were on the brinks of death and even granted them the very powers they used throughout the game. The three sisters decided to serve Highness out of respect for saving their lives, but as Highness grew more and more corrupted by the dark hearts and his desperation mission to summon his Dark Lord, he started to become abusive towards the girls, even willing to use them as battering rams and absorb their energy as his own. He even sacrifices both them and himself to give Void Termina more power. This really can be chalked up to his corruption more than anything, though. At the end of the day, he finds redemption when Kirby and his friends save both him and the Mage Sisters from the Darkness's influence, so we won't place them any lower. Even if there is still just a bit too much gray area here to call it a fully healthy tier relationship. Hydra Strawberry Shortcake. Next is the relationship between Kirby and the Squeaks. This band of rodent thieves made the grave mistake of, allegedly, stealing Kirby's cake and stealing more treasure from other parts of Dreamland, putting them right on Kirby's hit list. That said, they did ultimately send Kirby a replacement piece of cake after the events of the game, which is all the more impressive when you realize it wasn't even them who stole it. Yeah, fun fact, apparently it was a Waddle Dee who stole it. Man, Kirby's brain was not on its A game in Squeak Squad, huh? It's also notable that in Kirby Mass Attack, the Squeaks return and offer Kirby advice in exchange for medals he finds on his adventure. Granted, neither side even recognizes the other, but the fact that they're both able to be cordial with one another at least indicates that they're cool now. Next up, this relationship concerns the strongest warrior in the galaxy, and some pink dude too. It's Meta Knight and Galacta Knight. Like every other knight in this series, very little is known about Galacta Knight, save for the fact that he was called the greatest warrior in the galaxy until he was sealed away for fear that his strength was too great. He's brought back to fight Meta Knight via his wish on Nova in Kirby Superstar Ultra, and while he's yet to be confirmed as a canon character in the Kirby universe, his rivalry with Meta Knight shows that, much like Meta Knight, he's just a strong dude who likes fighting other strong dudes, except without any of the heroics. He's not evil by any means, but he isn't exactly good either. He just pops up every so often to fight Meta Knight, or whomever's playing the post-game mode that day. As a result, this bond falls less into friendly rivalry territory and more just into rivalry territory. Now it's time to talk about one of the absolute weirdest relationships on this list, Elfilin and Elfilis. Really? What can you even say about a relationship that consists of a powerful, destructive alien life form and its good-natured half? Or more like its good-natured 1%? Elfilis wants to absorb Elfilin into itself because, well, technically Elfilin is part of itself. Elfilin obviously doesn't want this, but when Chaos Elfilis is defeated in the final post-game boss rush, he accepts the last bit of Elfilis' soul, making the two finally become one. Hopefully, minus the potentially multiverse-destroying rampage this time. Grab your tissues, because the last entry in this category goes to the relationship between Max Profit Haltman and Susie Haltman. Brilliant businessman President Haltman was so ambitious with his technology that he ended up accidentally killing his daughter Susanna. Or, at least he thought he did. In actuality, the tragedy was simply Susie being transported to another dimension, having to fight tooth and nail to get back to her father, who, unfortunately, wouldn't even recognize her. Having been driven insane by his guilt, he poured his whole life into expanding his company, and as a result, Susie grew extremely resentful of him, planning to steal Stardream and sell it herself for profit. At least, that's one interpretation. For all we know, maybe Susie got her memory totally wiped as well. In any case, this is a totally tragic story, and while Haltman very obviously loves his daughter, fate had other plans that made this relationship fall far down our list. As we've now seen, not all relationships in Dreamland are dreamy, but these are the real nightmarish ones, the toxic relationships. We'll start things off with an iconic villain relationship, Marx and Kirby. Marx is an absolute menace to society. He literally manipulated the sun and moon into fighting just so Kirby would do all of the work to summon Galactic Nova, so he could then steal Kirby's wish and take over planet Popstar. So, the difference between Marx and Magolor, well, unlike Magolor, who not only regretted putting on the crown, but felt genuine remorse for deceiving Kirby, Marx did neither of those things. He never appears again in the main series until Star Allies, and even then it's not to redeem himself. He's literally only there because Kirby's offering him some food. The only good thing we can offer this relationship is that it's the highest spot in the toxic section. All hail the next segment, the relationship between Highness and Void Termina. Highness was once a devoted follower of Void Termina, the Dark Lord, and wanted to summon him to destroy all worlds as he wills. Unfortunately, this connection proved to be toxic in the purest sense of the word. Highness ended up corrupted by the Dark Heart's influence as he tried to summon Void Termina, and when he finally succeeded, you have to wonder what exactly he gained from doing this. We're in the bottom three now, so say what you will about Marx, but at least he hasn't been trying to murder Kirby for years. Enter Kirby and Morpho Knight. In Kirby Star Allies, a familiar orange and red butterfly lands on Galacta Knight. vanquishing him in seconds, revealing himself as Morpho Knight. In Kirby and the Forgotten Land, things get scarier. This dude is real. Oh, he's real, and he's been stalking Kirby consistently enough to absorb Soul Forgo to take its powers and fight Kirby. His motives are unknown, but there's a reason for putting him this high. This butterfly's been around Kirby, landing on him regularly for years. In Kirby Triple Deluxe, and even Return to Dreamland, he's clearly right there. So what was once an adorable running visual in the series is now recontextualized as a repeated murder attempt on our favorite little pink gumball. The lack of any context surrounding Morpho Knight is the only reason he isn't even lower. They might be surprised to see the relationship between Dark Matter and all of Dreamland anywhere but the very bottom of this list, but hear us out. Dark Matter's been seeking out Dreamland for decades now. It's a place known for peace, quiet, and happiness, so of course the new life form whose whole purpose is to bring darkness and destruction wherever it goes will be brought here. Dark Matter manifests itself in many ways, but one consistent theme is its ability to possess numerous entities in Dreamland. Most notoriously, this affects King Dedede, who can hardly go 2 games without getting manipulated by some incarnation of the devil. Of course, the darkness and the light are going to be duking it out. It's quite literally in their nature, but there's one rivalry that's much more sinister, much more cruel, and much more meaningless. Let it be known that we are bestowing the title of Most Toxic Kirby Relationship onto the eternal feud between Kirby and Wispy Woods. Is Kirby hostile towards Dark Matter? Sure, but it poses a legitimate threat to his world. Is Dark Matter hostile towards Kirby? Sure, but Kirby is literally its very opposite. Of course it's gonna want to snuff out his way of life. Then there's Kirby and Wispy Woods, and therein lies Kirby's greatest character flaw. The fact that for over 30 years, for seemingly no reason at all, he's been beating the life out of a tree every time he sees it. The thing is that this is a tree. It's not like other bosses. Kirby can just walk around him. Oh, Wispy Woods has something Kirby needs. Well, darn, guess he has to brutalize him. It's not like he can just, I don't know, take the thing he needs from this immobile tree. The worst part, though, is that Kirby has no remorse for this. He beats this poor tree until he starts crying and never once offers any comfort. This little guy has comforted everyone from corrupt kings to attempted murderers, but he has no issue killing a tree's children in front of him and then handicapping him. Did that get dark? If so, good. I'm tired of acting like this isn't the most weirdly inconsistent aspect of Kirby's character. Why in the name of King Dedede does he hate this tree so much?